So I want to get into some questions. Patrick mentioned that we have some great questions for everyone, and we got a couple of the generic type, and then there's some we really want to really jump in, but we'll do some of the generic stuff because people like to know these kind of things. So I'll ask each one of you, exactly what was the biggest influence on you, who supported you the most, and who gave you the best advice. Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who will be listening to this, and some of them are very interested in hearing about how you got started and who supported you in the beginning. So Patrick, if you'll go first, if you don't mind answering that question on some of the biggest influences that you had and who of your most supportive folks, and what advice that you can give to somebody.
Well, I wouldn't be able to go home tonight if I didn't say my family. So I'm going to have to start with my family. It's kind of a generic answer, but it is true. Starting with my father, he was an entrepreneur himself. So I understood the hard work. And then for those of you that want to be entrepreneurs and maybe have not selected a partner, partner selection as it relates to entrepreneurship is huge because they can support your dreams and understand the hard work. So going home to my family and kids is extremely important. Like I said earlier, I wish there was a magic bullet. I constantly studied, constantly trying to learn, constantly reading. So I don't know that there's one piece of advice that I can give or one person that's had the greatest influence, but the piece of advice that I can give, because I had a very type A personality, very strong-willed, which probably a lot of us on this call to overcome the daily struggles, is when somebody owes you money, don't be scared to ask. I think we all get so proud to think that that we're a successful business, and that you might not have a cash flow demand, or they might not. If you've earned it, then you deserve to ask for the money that you've earned. So I think sometimes that we're hesitant because it might look like a sign of weakness that you're asking for money or that you need the money. So, and my father-in-law gave me that advice, and I think it's really good advice. So if you've earned the money, don't be scared to ask for it.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Holly, if you could answer the same question about some of your influences and advice.
Sure. There's so many, I think, given how long we've been in business and how long I've been doing this, but I would say two things. Two particular people really stand out for me, and I'm going with Patrick's blanket statement, because if you don't have a great family to come home to, that's tough sledding, and I greatly appreciate the sacrifices that my entire team made on my behalf. But I will tell you, I think when I was very young, my grandmother said to me, she just drilled this into my head, and that was, you are put on this earth to try to make the world a little bit better of a place after you've been here. And so you should guide your steps to do whatever you can to make the world a better place. And that resonated with me, because I always felt like that was my responsibility. And I had the great fortune of when I first started working, well, for one thing, we lived right behind, we had a farm right behind Picadome Golf Course. And people would play golf there and hit their golf balls over the fence. And so I think as an entrepreneur, my first job was to collect the golf balls and sell them back to the golfers at the ripe old age of about 5 or 6. And how could you turn down, a little kid who's asking for a quarter to give him a ball back? That probably was pretty humorous to them. But in any case, I think that was probably my first entrepreneurial effort. But as I began my career, I always worked for some pretty amazing entrepreneurs, and each of them believed in grit, persistence, tenacity. And I have always said myself, no is the beginning of the conversation, because you just can't give up. I have had the great fortune for the past 35 years since moving back to Kentucky of having my uncle and godfather, Ted Bassett, be my mentor. And I think whenever I'm faced with a decision, I think, you know, what would Uncle Teddy do? Because I think that he lives his life with integrity and is incredibly well respected and valued worldwide because of his influence in the horse industry and his influence. And I think that he holds the highest standard. And so I have always tried to, I look up to him so much and have tried to think of how he would handle a situation, because his words are always take the high road. You'll never regret it.
Thank you, Holly, for that. Bishop, how about yourself? Some big influences or advice that you can give?
I'll start with the big influences. With the blanket, I'm going to say is my wife was really the one that initiated me to go out in business for myself. Especially she got tired of me coming home fussing about my employer. And one day I said something about it, and 2 days later, she said, we have a meeting with the attorney to set up your company. And I said, okay, if you're down with it, I'm good with it. So she's been behind me 100% since then. Of course, my mother, my father, and my grandfather, as far as coming up, being a hard worker. And I have to say, many of you that's on this phone call today or Zoom call, and others in the city, Patrick knows, Holly knows, when I first went into business, I went to knocking on doors, and a lot of people, I was really afraid of having the door shut in my face. I wasn't big on marketing, but everybody was very receptive, listened to my statement, listened to my program, and encouraged me to keep on making a struggle and getting out there and doing business. So Lexington has really welcomed me. I will say that, from business owners, reaching out to even Ray and several other people through the commerce, has been receptive of what Elaine Allen is about. There's a couple of other industries that have supported us. So I would say Lexington itself in the whole has really made a big impact on Elaine Allen. And I appreciate that from the community. You know, doing this kind of our background and maybe going on and looking at the challenges. Our biggest challenge was marketing, and because one, it started out with me, and so I'm trying to market myself at the same time, run a job site, and then when eventually bring on some employees. But really, in the construction business, the only way you can market is by producing a product. And so you got to be able to show a product to be able to market it. So basically, I had to complete some jobs to be able to sell the brand of Elaine Allen. So it's it kind of works against itself, but you got to just kind of dig deep, pull your boots up and keep on pushing forward.
Yeah, thanks, Bishop. And I guess, Melynda, you are in a nonprofit space, which is a unique space, but we'd like to hear about your motivations and encouragements and advice.
Well, and absolutely, and I don't think it's that much different, because a lot of what Bishop Carter said, yes, I might not be building a house, but without marketing, there's a lot of nonprofit competing for dollars. And so we're trying to provide a service here, but you got to market yourself. You got to get out there and talk in the community. So there's so many balls to keep in the air at once. It's trying to figure out which ones. And I think that alludes to what I'm going to share as my general comment, but I would say it's been a collective process to get where CASA of Lexington is at. And so same as the other three, family members, but also the staff here at CASA of Lexington, folks that are still working here, that have worked here previously and went on to other things, our volunteers that are doing the direct service of advocating for these children in our community, our board members that have been instrumental in helping us build our financials to be able to serve more children, and community supporters that just, I make the crack all the time that we're not a Mexican restaurant serving chips and salsa over here. We are advocating for abused and neglected children, and we can all chuckle about that, but when you don't have an advertising budget and it's the big whopping zero, you have to get real creative about how you educate people on what you're doing, while at the same time striving to do that direct mission of serving more children. So my takeaway, I've got a prop, is work hard and be nice to people. And I think that really sums it up. I don't think any of us got here by working 8 to 5, and maybe we would not be the best panelists for a self-care workshop. So maybe call other folks for that. But meaning, all kidding aside, I grew up in the country, and so, you know, you wake up when it's light and get at it, and sometimes even when the sun goes down, you're still working, right? And I think that we're all probably always on in our job. And Bishop, you talked about having a finished product for people to see. So I don't have the luxury of having a building, but I think I'm asking people to give money, and I'm not necessarily giving them a building in return, but I think never being afraid to make the ask. And the way I look at it is, I'm giving you an opportunity to invest in our children. They're not my physical children or yours possibly, but they're our community's children. And so never really taking it personal if somebody says no, and maybe it's not no, but maybe just not right now. Houston knows. I've already signed him up to be a volunteer. And Bishop Carter, I'm coming for your wife next 2 days, and she's already got a meeting with the attorney. That's my kind of gal. But so I really think if we stay focused on people, because at the end of the day, in all of our business, you don't build buildings if there's not people. We're building affordable housing to get people that maybe have had a little slight under their feet so they can go on to fulfill all their hopes and dreams and missions. So staying people focused, but that doesn't mean slacking off either. You got to continue to work hard and keep your focus and your heart where it's at to do exactly what Holly said, to make this world a little better. If we can make it, if we all make it a little better, what an amazing place this would be. And I guess that's the Girl Scout motto from my early days, is leave something better than you found it. And so I think I'll stick with work hard and be nice to people.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Let me ask, I have specific questions for you guys. We'll ask one more generic question. And it's to the moment of 2020. And, you know, everybody is going through a tough transitional time during this COVID-19. Our whole community. We're under a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. How are you guys dealing with it? And what practices coming out of what you've learned about COVID and how it's impacted your business, what practices will be a mainstay in your company that you will continue far beyond 2020? And we'll start again with Patrick.
Well, first of all, the uncertainty makes me extremely nervous. That said, you know, there are amazing opportunities out there, especially if you follow the market. There are companies out there that are doing better than they've ever done before, and then there's obviously companies out there that are struggling. So with opportunity, or with challenge comes opportunity, right? So that doesn't mean that we can keep doing business as normal, but we have to change things up a little bit. So in our business, the one thing that we've done is we used to have a leadership meeting every month. We have a leadership meeting once a week now for about an hour and 15 minutes, and go down all the kind of highlights that we used to do monthly. It's been extremely beneficial. With the uncertainty, it made me a little bit nervous, and it sounds like I'm the money guy, unfortunately, because I do have a lot of the passions these other folks, but this is kind of the question, is as it relates to outstanding AR. That makes me a little nervous, so we've put a big focus on that weekly meeting to get our outstanding AR down. So we've done a great job on that. It used to run, well, just to use percentages, we probably cut that in half from what we were the last couple of years on average. And we've also kind of picked up our marketing and unique sales opportunities. Bishop alluded to this earlier. The construction business, of course, we're all looking for reoccurring revenue. In the construction business, that's very difficult to find reoccurring customers. So we're hunters. We got to constantly go out and hunt and eat what we kill. So I've picked up I've increased our sales team, and we've increased our kind of just outside marketing. And, you know, as you mentioned earlier, we don't necessarily have the budget to do that, but if we're going to, you know, if we're going to solve this problem, we're going to have to figure out how to sell more and make sure we're staying on top of our cash. So those are the couple of things. And I think the thing that will stay will be this weekly leadership meeting. It's created some really good ideas, and it's a great platform for us all to come together and you know, to pursue this challenge and opportunity. And that's the big message I keep throwing out there is, while this is difficult and it's tough, I get it. And uncertainty makes a lot of us not sleep well at night, me included. But there are opportunities, and we are going to survive this. And the question is, are we going to be on top? So.
Thank you, Patrick, for that. Same question to you, Holly. What practices do you think will stay inside your organization that you put in place this year?
So we have affordable housing, and the business of that is very people-oriented. Our residents come into the property management offices to pay rent. They fill out applications. They, you know, that everything has, to this point, been very person-to-person oriented. We have actually, because of this, in order to protect both our residents and our employees, we have made the decision, and we're in the process right now of, we've had to completely shift our IT platform. And in fact, we're shifting to a completely different property management software that will allow our residents to submit rent payments online. They can do work order requests online. They can make applications. Everything has been moved to a virtual standpoint. And that is a big shift that I think is going to be seen throughout our industry because unfortunately, we're just going to have to see, as far as we all know, that's going to change a lot of different things, particularly within our industry, but also from an architectural standpoint. I think how we design buildings for multifamily, the HVAC systems that we utilize to ensure that there's proper air circulation. I think these are all issues that are not just a flash in the pan, but these are long-standing, really tectonic shifts that are occurring within our industry. And certainly, as I'm attending an organizational seminar next week on all of the top architects and designers and social media people to determine what are the changes in how we live and how we design our spaces to allow us to take care of our residents safely and our maintenance technicians, and you know how you deal with changing filters. These are things that you would never have thought about before, but now everything has to be looked at within the lens of the COVID. So, and keeping everybody safe. So I know that is that's a long-term situation that is going to profoundly affect our industry.
Thank you, Holly. Bishop?
I believe this COVID experience has allowed us to kind of, for us to implement more of a health and safety awareness in our company. Uniquely, and fortunately, I was blessed. Right when COVID hit, I had just brought on 2 new employees, 2 project managers. Week after that, it was kind of the COVID thing started to take place. And everybody kind of started looking as whether or not they're going to have a job. We lost one of our big projects for the year that we thought we was going to have for the year. But we just all buckle down, focused on, Pat alluded to, your ARs, and where your money is and your resources, and tighten up the budget a little bit. From the health and safety standpoint, we was in the middle of working at a senior living resident, assisted living home, and a nursing care, along with memory care. And so it made us more aware of our environment and making sure that we're being safe and clean and healthy around those folks as they continue to allow us to proceed with the renovations that they had in progress. So some of those practices that we took, that we had to do in that situation, we just pretty much made it a standard, and it really allowed us individually to realize what we're doing with our own self health and safety and what they're taking home. Like Holly brought up the HVAC system, when we was in different places dealing with the renovation, just making sure that we're not disturbing anything that can potentially carry out throughout the facility. So COVID has really opened our eyes as far as has also allowed us to be a little bit more vocal in making a suggestion to the owner whenever you're in a project or upcoming project, which sometimes you typically won't mention, just because you never had to think about that process of the health and safety in the future. So it's really allowed our guys to really, Pat brought up more meetings. Fortunately, we're too small to do more meetings, but we spend a lot more time at the end of the day, email communication of what's up for today, how are you going to proceed with the safety aspect on the next project, which was a standard procedure for us, but it just kind of became a little bit more detailed, which basically becomes a normal everyday procedure from here on out.
Thanks. And Melynda, for you and your nonprofit?
Sure. So lots of things change, same for everybody. So our volunteers and staff are in court. We have 5 courts a week. Those pretty much went virtual because unfortunately child abuse, child neglect research show only increases in times of stress, but we had the added challenge with schools being closed and still closed for months. Nationwide, educators are the #1 reporter. So here in Kentucky and Fayette County, the same as across the nation, there's been over a half decrease in reports, but research shows if anything, it's unfortunately increasing. #2, we rely on fundraising. Talk about fundraising in a pandemic. Woo! So we've had to shift that model up, and the big takeaway on things is communication. I think it was important for our donors and funders to understand the need is still there. We're still serving children. Now that looked different for some of our volunteers. We of course meet with the children at least monthly. We had to switch that up, especially in residential treatment facilities. The volunteers weren't even able to get in if they wanted to get in. So looking at doing FaceTime, Zoom meetings, phone calls where that couldn't happen. And now a lot of our volunteers are back to in-person meetings, but with 200 volunteers, we've got a little bit of everything going on. Internally, we've resulted to more Zoom meetings. So instead of having our staff coming from other counties or even statewide, we have done many more Zoom meetings. I think that's the hot term that we probably all have been utilizing more. And I think there can be some cost savings for us in not traveling as much when we come out of the pandemic. Our volunteers go through a 30-hour initial training that has always been in person. So we didn't really stop. We went on hyper mode, I guess you could say, when this happened. And I said, we have to figure out how are we going to train volunteers, because we're going to need more than we typically need when we get out on the other side of this. So we worked, and our national CASA organization worked to put the 30-hour training online. Now that looks very different. So instead of training the average class size of 35, we're limited to 5 people in an online training class. So it takes a lot more staff hours to do the smaller groups, but we've been successful in training 42 volunteers during this pandemic, which is pretty crazy, in groups of 4 and 5, but that's been done remotely. And I think that's something that hopefully we can look at still offering even when we go back to in-person trainings in the larger class sizes. Maybe somebody lives in one of our rural counties and can't doesn't have the transportation to get to Lexington for the 30-hour training. Maybe we can continue to do small online groups for those folks that are interested in advocating for children but couldn't come in for the trainings. I think the big takeaway that we've been successful with is never stop communicating, whoever your target market is, and let them know what's going on.
Yeah, thank you, guys. We're going to jump into some more specific questions to each of you as individuals in your companies. But I want to make sure we lift up what you guys just said, because this could be a big help for a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs. Everybody here mentioned communication, over communicating, working on efficient communicating. I think that was critical. Each and every one of you also mentioned using more IT. Holly mentioned a different platform, some virtual things, using technology to your advantage. And I think that's critical for a lot of folks to hear and take that note. If you're in a business that's so inclined and you need to improve your performance on the technology side, you need to look into that. Each and every one of you mentioned safety. That's something that's top of mind of all of us coming out of 2020, and will probably continue to be that way for a while. And each and every one of you mentioned efficiency, how to be very efficient about what you do and how you use your time wisely, and so on and so forth. So I think I wanted to make sure we lifted it up for folks that were on the call. And then we want to ask a couple of specific questions about your businesses, specifically in you as individuals. This one's for Bishop. Bishop, being a minority owned business, what have some of the key challenges been for you? What local initiatives are you involved with to overcome some of those barriers or obstacles? And what would you say are the biggest challenges for minority companies, specifically African American companies, in Lexington right now as we stand and speak?
I'll say, as speaking from a minority business in general, specifically Elaine Allen, being a construction management general contractor, starting my own business, all I knew was more from the management side of construction. Since I've been in the industry, first project I was on with a GC, it was 75 million plus. Other projects after that, since then, the largest project I was the owner's rep on was $489 million, which was a hydro plant. And as the owner's rep, overseeing 400 people, including general contractors, engineers on site every day, all I knew was management. And so when I came out to the field of Lexington and said, I'm going to do this my own, and I'm saying I'm general contractor, construction management, and you get looked at, what's your background? And you start mentioning it, they're looking at me like, where did I come from? And I would say that I traveled a lot during my tenure. So being a minority business at that is like, okay, this is somebody's experience, but how did he just pop up in the middle of Lexington? Fortunate enough, I knew Pat through some other friends and throughout the industry. And I started knocking on his door, and he encouraged me to stay fast. But a lot of times dealing with the minority business, one of the things, resources, one, marketing, two is finances. Once you land a job, be able to have those finances to support the job, get bonded, which I know is a common issue with minority businesses and any general contractor. And I would say the biggest problem with Lexington, well, I don't want to say the problem was just starting off minority general contractor. I don't know if anybody even started or sustained, or there's been one to stay here. My experiences through Cincinnati, Columbus, and other places, in Tennessee, Indianapolis, there's been other minority companies around just to sustain. People see it and it encourages others to do business. So there's some other companies here, I don't want to take away from them here in the construction industry, but I think I just came to a different approach and said, I don't want to be necessarily the one getting my hands dirty. I want to be able to run a job. I want to be able to run a $20 million, $100 million job. I want to be able to support an owner to allow them to have resources to be able to oversee their project. But through that, and when I started, I also came through RAS, the accelerator program through the Commerce Lexington, which allowed me to be around banks, Forcht bankers, which is one, other bankers, and other different networks that allow me to see and network with different people already within the community and be able to give them the opportunity to see that I'm here. I'm here to stay, and I'm going to keep on striving. I think just being a minority company, there's just not too many businesses that's here in Lexington. And so when one pops up, I guess the biggest fear is just somebody coming through for a year or two and they're leaving. But I'm here. It's been 3 years and plus, and I hope to see many more. So I just encourage anybody who wants to start a business, one, you got to just stick with it. Whether you're minority or not, there's going to be some challenges, but you just have to stick with it. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like your plan. But I take that as a little bit of life. I definitely heard that from my father through his ministry. It's just that not everybody's going to like you. But what else are you going to do? You know, you're going to have to pull up your boots. You're going to have to, if you believe in something, stick with it and keep moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about minority spend within a lot of the major organizations we have in Lexington. And when I say minority spend, I mean minority female and veteran-owned spend with Fayette County Schools, the city, and UK, and so on and so forth. So I know those entities produce a lot of spend. So I know, have you had challenges dealing with those entities, or how do you feel your success or how your relationships with all those entities?
Be honest with you, Fayette County Public Schools has reached out. I will say they are trying to encourage the minority spend. They've been a client of Elaine Allen. There's some other entities I haven't had much success with. And I'm going to say I'm not going to put it all on them, but also too is the growth of Elaine Allen. Several large educational facilities, say for example UK. It's really hard for Elaine Allen to go over, I'll be honest with you, go over and do a lot of projects at UK just due to what it takes to be able to be successful on a project UK. I've bid work at UK. I wasn't successful, but at the same time, I found a niche somewhere else. So it's kind of a little bit of balances. Holly has her niche, you know, Pat has his niche, and CASA has her niche. You know, and once you get that comfort zone, or you know you can make money over here and not deal with half of the headache, you know, that's where you go at. But every now and then you have to stick your neck back out and knock on that door. But it just doesn't, you know, instead of focusing 50% of your time, you kind of just every now and then let them know that you haven't gone anywhere, knock on the door. If you don't get it, keep moving. But I will say the minority spend, I'm looking forward to the community to expand. I mentioned this on another call I was on the commission. I don't want people just to jump up and spend and put a load on a minority business just because they said we're going to spend with a minority business. A lot of minority businesses in town, they're small businesses. It's no different if they're non-minority. You can't just dump a load on a small business and expect a corporate response. So you got to be careful about that. Allow people to grow with you. If you want to spend with them, allow them to grow with you. Don't just let it be a one-time thing, or don't overload them. You know, grow them.
Good. That's a good answer. Thank you for that. Patrick, you are part of an interesting program called the Dream Lottery. Can you talk about that and what that has meant to your employees?
The Dream Lottery is something that we probably came up with 4 or 5 years ago. It's a personal passion of mine. I'm a big believer in setting dreams and goals in life. And quite frankly, being able to be the owner of Churchill McGee, it's a dream of mine, right? So it's a dream come true. So I wanted to be able to give that back in return. And as any entrepreneur and leader of a business, it's hard sometimes to separate your personal life and your business life. To me, they don't really exist. If you want to know the truth, it's just my life, and this is the way I live my life. So I thought, instead of trying to do it personally, why don't I use this platform to allow others to, you know, to kind of give back and let them dream. So what we've done is at the end of every year, we have all of our folks, except for people on the leadership team put in a dream of theirs in a hat, and we draw it out, and whatever that is, and we partake in that. So, and I think one thing it's a challenge to us, or some, kind of, the hierarchy of needs is probably us on this call don't have a hard time dreaming or setting goals, but for others that might not be given the opportunities that we have, or might not have the ability to think, I think just asking them once a year, what's that dream worth? Just sit down and think about it. Set your goal. What's it worth? And put it in a hat, and maybe you'll win. So, quite frankly, they're my dreams. I can't afford my dreams. So, if y'all, Ray, if I ask you to put a dream in a hat, I'm not sure I'm going to finance it, but it's amazing what you find, and it makes you it's very humbling. Somebody will want to help put their kid through school. Well, I can't, I guess we're not going to put their kid through school, but we'll start the education fund, with, a decent chunk of change in it. Somebody wants to buy a house, we'll put the down payment for the house. I mean, so we're spending a decent amount of dollars to do this every year. And, and most of the dreams, quite frankly, are pretty materialistic, and the materialism is something that's pretty attainable. We've sent people on vacations with their entire family and things like that. They never got to go to the beach before. So somebody, Holly was mentioning her Uncle Teddy. I've heard her talk about it many times but I was told by a gentleman like that sometimes when you're able to give, it's more selfish to give than people realize, because we are probably getting greater joy than they're getting. Just so it's a great thing, but quite frankly, it's probably somewhat selfish for me to do that just so I can get quite a bit of joy. So I don't know if you have any questions in regards to it, but that's kind of the basis of the.
No, I mean, it really speaks to the value of your employees, your associates, and you have a unique understanding that building retention within your organization means a lot. It means a lot to all of our organizations to have people that have experience and that are working for us, and they feel a valuable part of the team. So it's an excellent program. I'm going to adopt some small part of that. Maybe not. We may call it something in the dream lottery. I like it. We may call it a weekly lottery, but I like the idea behind it. I really do.
Well, and just real quick, and I know we've got a limited amount of time. I want to piggyback off of something else we do is called the Give Back program. And the reason I've even mentioned this is because, Ray, what you just said is we actually stole this from another local business, West 6th Street, to be honest with you. I found out years ago that they were donating, I think then, and I don't know if they've changed, I think then was 7.5% to give back to the local community. So something we do, and I challenge you guys and anybody that's on this call, is we don't do 7.5%, but we take 5% of our net every year and we put it in an account. It's called our Give Back account. I can't say that we always give that back to the community, sometimes just to our team members, sometimes quite frankly it's to our customers. But I just mentioned that because of what you just said, Ray, is we learn from each other. And sometimes you hear these things and these challenges. So if we could all do these little things to make our community better, going back to what both of the ladies have said on this call. So it's very, very important, very valuable.
Excellent. So Melynda, let me follow up with you. You have done a lot in a short period of time. You have been very successful. And so I want to just give you a chance to lift up a little bit more. What do you attribute that to? And what are you especially proud of since you've been the executive director?
Yeah, so I think it's been a wild ride, but I think it really comes back to getting the word out. Because as I shared, probably some of you on this call today did not know what CASA was. And that's one of the big challenges we have, And when we all sort of mention marketing, advertising, and when you look at we spend $0 still on that, it becomes even more challenging. So how I've gotten around that is beating the door down. Somebody mentioned that too. I've spoken at men's only barbecue events and had 5 minutes before I was asked to leave. I think some people thought I was evangelist for the first 3 years because I've been in about every church in our county radius. I've done a full hour service to 3 minutes before and just been in the bulletin. I've been to bunco groups, workplaces. I'm always encouraging people, everybody has a role to play. And if you can't be a CASA volunteer or donate, you can help me in spreading the word about how big of a deal child abuse and neglect is in Kentucky and Lexington, which, by the way, we are #1 for child abuse and neglect. And that's not something that gets a lot of media attention. And we've been among the top states, if not the top state, for 9 years now. And you know, this is not basketball, Patrick. You've got the right cup there, but this is not basketball, folks. We need to do something about this. But unfortunately, as a state and community, we've been a bit behind the times and have injected our funds on the back end instead of breaking the cycle up front and making whole children to become whole adults in our community. But so I think the answer has just been, don't take no, say, okay, not right now, when works for you. And Houston has already been victim to this because he's been out here twice now, and he's going to be the next CASA of Lexington volunteer. You heard it here on this platform, Houston Hall, the very next CASA of Lexington volunteer. And so, you know, you just keep at it, getting the word out there, letting people know what's going on. And I think if I really have to think what I'm most proud about, there's a lot of things, but it really boils down to what I said before about the people, about the children that we've been able to serve. And thinking when I took this position a little over 7 years ago, we were operating on about $70,000 a year. So you guys soak that in, you know, not so much. And last year we had grown so much and our budget had grown, which really means we're serving more children because there is a cost to do that. It costs us about $1,000 to give a child a CASA for an entire year. It outgrown the space we were in, which was provided by the city government. And it's real hard to move when you're not paying rent, utilities, phones, or internet, right? But we were at a crux of, okay, we cannot continue to grow anymore, or we have to find a new office space. And so the issue was we were only serving about 15% of the need of the children here in Lexington. So as a board of directors and organization, were we going to decide to be okay with that? And I'll let you know, I'll never be okay with that until we're serving 100% of the children in need. And so in less than 12 months, once we had identified a building, which took 3 years, we really were able to fundraise and bring in individual donations. And in less than 12 months, we paid off $1 million building. And this is not about a building. This is about generations to come that will be served because of this building, which allows for space for more staff members, more volunteers to advocate for abused and neglected children. And I hope that, you know, that becomes a legacy and lives well beyond my time with the organization or even here, and that Lexington and Kentucky are no longer #1 for child abuse, child neglect. And there's been a ripple change that affects families' lives in lots of ways.
Thank you, Melynda. So Holly, we're going to let you finish up. The question I'm going to ask, you can answer it or just wrap up for us, however you want to do it. Talk briefly about affordable housing and the difficulties in the process. And if you could change anything about regulations, I know that's big we got construction folks on here, we got regulation laws, etc. What would you change to make things easier or make our process easier?
I will answer as briefly as I can because that covers a lot of territory. But to the process of affordable housing is really challenging, from not only the financial sources of funds because it's so difficult. Construction costs continue to go up, and certainly during now there have been some serious supply chain interruptions If you want to try to find some appliances for a multifamily development, good luck. If you haven't ordered them 6 to 8 months ahead of time. It's crazy. The price of lumber has skyrocketed. I'm sure that the forest fires are not helping that. Unforeseen conditions are always a challenge. And, finding land and dealing with NIMBYism in my world is also very hard. But what we have done is wherever we've developed, we have actually raised the property values, and people suddenly realize that maybe it's their grandmother who is on Social Security and needs a place to live, or maybe whatever. I think we are slowly working those lines. Meadowthorpe is a project that we just completed, and it's the biggest one that we've done to date, 71 units, and we opened it at the end of July, and it will be leased. I mean, it's been a record lease up, and many of the people that are moving in are people that live in Meadowthorpe that wanted to downsize and have less work and upkeep. But overall, if there would be anything that I could change about the process, our projects, because of the strict cost constraints that we're under, it actually costs about 130% of a market rate project to create an affordable housing, because all of our units are Energy Star, all of our lighting's LED. It drives up the cost, and yet our resources are constrained. The one thing that I would want, and the Senate and House could do this tomorrow if they so chose, we operate under tax credits, and if they could lock the 4% rate, we could build a whole lot more affordable housing, and that would be my one request, because we love what we do, and the housing needs are just skyrocketing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Holly. So I want to thank all of you guys for being here today and participating. I really appreciate everyone's experience level, everyone's passion. And I want to just go around one more time. I know we're over time, but we're already over. So what's a couple more minutes? If you had one word of advice or something that you can say meaningful, what we think is folks will watch this, and they've watched, they'll view this several times. If there was one word of advice for someone just like you, maybe Holly 30 years ago, trying to get involved in business or those kind of things, a couple of words that we can go through. So Holly, if you'll go first.
Never give up. And my favorite thing is no is the beginning of the conversation.
Bishop?
I use a phrase that's kind of brought to me through school. It's called excuses. Excuses are tools of incompetence, used to build monuments of nothingness. Those who use them certainly amount to anything. So I don't believe in excuses. So just keep on pushing forward. If it didn't go the way you want it to go, figure out how to make sure it goes the way you want it. Don't come up with an excuse.
Awesome. Patrick?
Couple things. One, believe in yourself, because you're going to have to live with it. I mentioned my wife and father family being very supportive of me. If you're thinking about having a partner, select your partner just as carefully as you would select your mate. And number 3, I mentioned this early on, is there's really no silver bullet. I think every single one of us on this panel can say we get up every day, same time, do the same routine, and just hopefully make a positive change. And there's going to be days that you go backwards. Mama said there's going to be days like this, but guess what? I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to do it.
Exactly. Melynda?
I thought you were holding us to one word, so I was initially going to go with persevere, and I think I'm echoing what everybody said. But just because you make a mistake or go backwards, that doesn't mean you can't go forward. So exactly as Patrick said, you just get up, dust yourself off. There's no time to hang there too long because there's work to be done. So either get on the bus because this bus is moving forward. So persevere and keep trying whatever that mission is within your heart for the organization or personally. You got to keep on keeping on.
Thank you. And thank all of you guys once again. You guys are valuable resources. And all I would say to everything that you guys said is Commerce Lexington is here to be a resource and advocate for your business. Tap into the programs and things that we have at Commerce Lexington can assist you as you try to grow and develop your business. And we're trying very hard to continue to provide those resources and be partners with you guys as you try to be successful in what you do. I want to again thank Forcht Bank for their sponsorship and all the other sponsors for supporting this week's Salute to Small Business Celebration. And I hope that everybody will sign up online to watch the party this Friday, September 25th, beginning at 12:30 p.m. We will announce the overall Small Business of the Year of winner for 2020. Thank you guys again and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.